Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Kristen, and I'll be the moderator on today's webinar. If you're new to Integro in our webinar series, we do one webinar a month, typically on the third Thursday, usually at 1 p.m., and it's always 30 minutes long, so we're trying to get you something that's quick and valuable, and hopefully this presentation will meet that criteria. Today we're going to be talking about covering your assets, why compliance cleanup is a must, and how to conduct one. And you're lucky because you have two presenters today, Jason Welsh and Scott Burt. Jason is a senior consultant at Integro, and he has a lot of experience in content remediation, so I guess we could consider him an expert. And Scott is the president and CEO at Integro, and he's an information governance expert. So between the two of them, they have a lot of valuable information to give you guys. However, before they start, I do have a few quick recommendations for you guys. If you have any questions, please ask them at any time in the question box. And today we're going to mix it up a bit. So if you have a question and you don't want to type it out, please feel free to raise your hand. And at the end of the presentation, Jason and Scott can talk to you directly. I'll unmute you, and you can ask your questions that way. Either way, whatever you do, all the questions will be answered at the end. And I also recommend that you maximize your screen. And please pay attention, because we're going to have two polls during today's webinar, and we want to make sure that you get the opportunity to provide your feedback during those polls. And now that I've gone through with my huge list of things to talk about, Scott, take it away.
Excellent. Thanks, Kristen. And to make the miles a little bit less here, we'll turn on the little webcam thing here and say hi and put a face to the name. We'll just have it up for a few minutes here as we get introduced. I want to start off and talk about, you might be curious, who all is interested in this topic. And today's participants, we have a pretty large registration, a lot of folks joining us, and they come from a variety of industries. And it really represents that this is not just a topic that's isolated to financial or some other certain vertical. Every company out there, if you have employees, if you do any business in Europe, have any partner information, employee information, customer information, the GDPR is going to be very relevant to you. And if you don't know what that is yet, make sure you research that or watch our past webinar on what is the GDPR. And then also the titles there, a lot from IT, legal, records. It's fun. I'm seeing more and more information governance titles out there. Still don't see any chief information governance officers. I'm looking forward to those. But just gives you a sense of who is joining us on this call today. So why do we want to clean up troves of data? I mean, you have massive amounts of data. The companies that are on these calls, by the way, are oftentimes here not small. Why do you want to go through all your data and clean it up for compliance or sensitive data? Well, as we know, there's regulatory drivers, like I mentioned, the GDPR, and the GDPR in particular has very, very significant teeth. So when that goes into effect in May of next year, it will, it's already getting everybody's attention, but boy, that first fine, when it gets levied, it's going to be interesting. But data breaches, think Sony and think of those, all that sensitive data that has been published up on WikiLeaks from the NSA and other places. And so you want to lock down your data, secure your data, and especially that sensitive data for privacy, etc. Your reputation risk, like I just mentioned, Sony, privacy obligations, and the like, are why you'd want to do this. What specifically are we talking about, and what are you looking for? Privacy information. So that's personal information about your, again, employees, partners, customers, you name it. Financial information, as well as health and medical information. And that's what you're looking for, that you're not supposed to have in free text, unsecured, out on your file shares, which we all know we do, but it is in violation of regulations and does need to be cleaned up. The who, it becomes an interesting topic. I was just watching another webinar on GDPR, and that's really the first important question. Who owns this? Who owns the responsibility for information governance at your company? And different companies are going to have different answers. So it may be one of these folks. It may be a CEO or a privacy officer, very likely. Legal oftentimes is the sponsor or lead on these things. Compliance officers. And if we don't have one of those who are taking the lead on these requirements, then it's probably the CIO or somebody on his or her team that is leading that effort. And whoever it is that kind of owns it at the top level, it is a cross-functional effort. So you're probably going to be putting together a cross-functional team to lead the effort. So how? Well, that's what we're going to talk about here today. How do you go after massive amounts of data and find it and remediate it? So a couple of examples. First off, what are you going to find? And if you don't already know, if you haven't already done either an assessment or a full-on analysis of your content, that's really one of the first places you need to start, because then you'll get an idea of the order of magnitude. So for instance, in a file system recently, 10 terabytes of content yielded these kinds of results: 120 plus thousand files with credit card data, 2,000 with CVV data, which is part of the credit card data, the 3-digit number, you know. Personally identifiable information, over 1 million files, driver's licenses, EIN tax ID numbers, almost 1 million, social security numbers, and passports. That's a lot of content. So as you can tell, if you, and a lot of you, most of you have more than 10 terabytes of data, and if you're similar to this company, you're going to be looking at, it gives you some order of magnitude of, gee, what kind of a team we're going to need, what kind of tools, what kind of processes. It really does shine a light on those skeletons in the closet. On Microsoft Exchange, for example, 800 mailbox recently yielded content, 50,000 some for credit cards and 50,000 some for social security numbers. And, you know, note to self, you don't want to have credit card numbers and social security numbers unsecured in being sent around in email and stored in email. Another example here, this one's kind of focusing on social security numbers for another client, and internal data, it's like employees, spreadsheets, oftentimes with every employee address, salaries, birth dates, again, unsecured on-file shares. It was old data and it was brand new data, and it can also be in pretty obscure files and locations. You know, you wouldn't expect a business application that maybe has been around a while, whatever the case might be, that is regularly spitting out log files, and in those log files it contains personally identifiable information or credit card numbers or things like that, and it's just populating this unsecured content out of the file shares. So things we need to find and fix. Outlook contacts, interestingly, some companies, employees trying to do their job, they're figuring out, hey, let's just store these customer social security numbers in my Outlook contacts, and so I have it handy to do their job. So resourceful, but against policy. Hopefully it's against your policy. Externally, again, thousands of files, and look here, sometimes they're even full entire database exports with everyone marked as the owner of the file. So those are the kind of skeletons you're going to find and things that need to be cleaned up. So we're going to take a poll. Kristen, help us out here. You're going to get the thing prompt up there and go ahead and answer. What is your progress in cleaning up the sensitive data in your enterprise? And then Kristen, guide me on this thing here. I want to remember how we do this.
Hey everyone, so the poll is up and you guys can provide your responses. We'll keep it up for a bit longer, get a few more people to get their votes in.
All right, we're getting there. Boy, everybody's in the same place, it looks like. All right, so go ahead and share the results there. I don't think it's going to change too much from there. Thank you for voting, everybody. We appreciate it. And you can see that most people are in this building awareness stage. You know, I mean, I oftentimes think about it. Just think when you got your first file share, right, or access to your first file share, it was in the 90s, right? Probably, or depending on how old you are. If you're like me, it was in your 90s. And back then it was just here, store stuff. And there was no policies, no rules. It was like teenagers with no curfew, and you could store whatever you want as long as you want. And it's only been in the more recent past where it really matters what is stored out there and how it's stored and things like that. And so it is a continuous journey that we're all on for information governance. So 70% of us building awareness, some of us are in the cleanup in progress stage, and that doesn't surprise me too much. I thought we might be a few more, a little bit further than that, but let's get going. Now, I got a couple more slides here before Jason starts talking about the tools for remediation. I'm going to talk about what does the compliance look like, a cleanup look like. I might use sensitive data cleanup. I kind of like those words too. But guess what, folks? It's probably not a surprise here. It's a combination of people, process, and the technology, or tools to do the work. So people, I've already mentioned a little bit of who should be involved in leading it, and then a cross-functional group that goes across business, IT, information governance, legal, and the like. And you need to do a lot of education, and there's a growing basis of content out there in legal tech and different conferences and ARMA, etc., as well as up on the internet. So got to get experienced, and then also educate and socialize across the users that this is not front of mind, is information governance. One thought for staffing expectations for a project like this. This is a sample of a recent one that we did. And we're, with the client, help organize that committee, that team of people that are involved. There we go. We'll just draw a circle around it there. That is the leadership committee that helps oversee the overall, well, what sources are we going to go to first? Where's our greatest risk? How fast should we go? Who should be assigned to it? Things like that. General oversight and guidance and top-line decisions. And then it's the core leaders, a couple folks that are doing the program management and driving the solution every day, reporting up to that leadership committee and driving the process and the methodology and the execution of that program down through the team. You're going to need technical folks, your IT team, probably our IT team, unless you're doing it yourself, to be able to index everything and analyze it, study it, report out on it, and then based upon what you learn in that technical analysis, that will help go up then for defining more about the process and methodology and how we're going to do the remediation, and then of course driving that down to the individual teams that might be broken up by and one expert looking at content from a certain part of the business or a certain department, so HR or finance and the like. Your processes, people are going to vary, but in big animal pictures, it's going to look something like this. You need to assess. What do you have? And that assessment might be first a sampling. You know, here's a few terabytes of data that is a representative, that we think will be representative of the larger picture of the data footprint across our enterprise, and assess that, index it, and using tools, general expression, things like that, we can pull out and then give an inventory of here's all your social security numbers, credit card numbers, medical information, things like that. Then identify that content that needs to be, that is risky and what you're going to do with it, policy enforcement. You're going to kind of set policy, refine your policy, and roll that out, train it to the people, and it'll help guide the rules that we're going to be doing the cleanup on. And then, of course, the remediation, which we're going to talk about the approaches for remediation of that legacy content. A very important point. You've got content that has been in your files for, you know, many years, weeks, months, that needs to be cleaned up. We call all that the legacy content, data at rest, already in your enterprise. And then we have all that data that's going to get processed tomorrow and the next day as part of your business processes. And we want to address both cleaning up the legacy and new processes and systems for the future. Tools, big picture, are indexing tools, so crawling across and indexing everything, and then the governance and legal products, controlling your content, and then remediating and cleaning it up. And I've got just one more couple things here. When you're thinking about how we're going to do this, you need to think about what's our maturity level, what policies we already have in place, and tools we own, etc. And then that will help guide you for how are we going to do this? Are we going to outsource it and say, just come in and do it for us? Bring the tools, bring the people, bring the leadership, bring the methodologies, and we'll fix the problem for you, and then you can learn in the process and eventually go to a self-service model, maybe shift the weight from one foot to the other, or maybe you have the bandwidth and the expertise and you just want the self-service model, buy the tools and get some advice and consulting maybe, and train it on the tools and go. And Jason, I'm not leaving you as much time as I said I would leave you, but we're going to take a poll here. First off, what is your organization's biggest challenge in cleaning up sensitive data? And as you're taking that poll there, Jason will be getting ready and he'll be taking it up here in a moment. But let's see how we're doing on the poll results. I like these polls. I hope you guys do too. I think they're interesting and sharing the results is fun. Yep, not a surprise. So we've got quite a few folks. We've got a few more votes to get there. Put them in there, folks. There we go. Okay, we're at critical mass there, Kristen. Go ahead and publish what we have. If you were slow, too bad. Okay, there we go. So a pretty even mix, really. The largest one is time and human resources. We're all too overloaded, right? We have too much to do. And then tools to identify and who is leading this thing are the big ones. And then tools. So speaking about tools, which is our next section, Jason, take it away, please.
Thanks, Scott. Let me give me a second here just to share my screen. Got the poll up and finished. When Scott told me that he was going to be doing a webinar on protecting your assets, I almost begged him to be able to cover this content because we run into so much confusion on these specific terms and technologies. So today I want to take just a little deep dive into some of these remediation methods. First, we're going to cover delete. It's always the best form of security. We're going to cover securing that content. We're going to cover redaction, masking, and then finally tokenization. So delete it. Delete the toxic content. Delete it all. Always a fantastic option. Oftentimes we meet with clients and this is what they want to do. But we reach a point after analysis where we realize that some of these questions, like if the data is a record or if there's business value to it, end up as blocking that capability to delete. If the content has no value to business but it's still part of a legal hold, we can't delete the content. Most of our clients face these issues, and deleting it, while it can be a good option for remediation, it's not a one-size-fits-all remediation option. And that brings us to securing it. So we can secure the toxic content. We can move the content and the business processes that generate it or that are outputs into a secure location. Something to note about securing. You are building a bigger wall, and if you're securing the content without identifying all of the business processes that interact with it, you're talking about a very high level of business process disruption. To compound that, if you don't have policies in place under content creation, that content could be continually created and generated in the unsecure area, which creates the boat with the hole in it. You're bailing out the boat, securing the content, and more content is coming in being generated. Never a good place to be in. Let's move on to redaction and masking. I wanted to cover these specifically because these two terms get thrown around a whole bunch when we talk about remediating content, and oftentimes they're used interchangeably, and they're very different. So redaction and masking, they both provide a way to keep relevant business data where it is while neutralizing that toxic content. It's a less disruptive process to the business, and it can also be role-based and or automated. And when I say role-based, I mean you can actually provide secure views of unredacted or masked content as part of your solution. Redaction and masking can be especially useful if the toxic components or credit card numbers, whatever you have that you don't need to have in that unsecured location, do not add value to the underlying content as a whole. So I wanted to cover this just a little bit further on redaction and masking. So on the left-hand side, we can see redaction. It's got the black bars across specific parts of the document. That document is called permanently redacted. And that means that whatever was underneath those black bars is never to be seen again. So when we talk about role-based redaction, that allows you to lift those redaction bars up for a specific group of users. Redaction is a very common thing. CAI has been doing it for decades. It's surefire. You can even do it with a magic marker if you need to. The second thing I want to cover here was masking, and it's often called obfuscation. Those two terms are used interchangeably, and they are the same thing. So I think it's good to group them together here. In this example, we see the patient number and social security number are actually being master obfuscated. What's happening is that values, dummy values, are being placed in those fields as part of the masking redaction process, and that makes that content less risky. Data masking obfuscation can be used in a variety of business use cases. We can use it for marketing, analytics, when you do not need to reveal specific information, but you still want to share the underlying analytical data. Lastly, I wanted to talk about tokenization. So tokenization is probably one of the most maligned terms in our industry right now. There's a lot of different definitions of it, so I wanted to give you just a quick rundown of what the definition of it is. It's the substitution of sensitive data with a specific token. And that token then can be used to retrieve the value from an authorized party. They're primarily used in structured data formats, so think databases. And it's often used for credit card processing. So a good example here, we have my credit card number, which is Jenny's phone number, and my tokenized credit card number, which is a value that has been generated that is actually a pointer to that credit card number from a token provider. Something to take a note in tokenization is that you can't reverse engineer that token into a credit card number. It actually has to be submitted to either an internal token provider or an external token provider to either check validity or retrieve the original credit card number. So for a summary, there's a lot of different remediation methods out there, a lot of different terms being thrown around. Basic solution, there's no one answer, no one remediation strategy or technology that's going to fit all of your content. Remediation without policy and rules is an unending process. This is bailing out the boat with the hole in it. If you're generating more content while you're remediating, you will be remediating forever, and we never want to see that. So it's very important to understand that IG policy rules enforcement is a very, very strong piece of your remediation strategy. And then lastly, just to reiterate, all of these methods used in combination are usually part of the solution for remediating your content that you've identified. Scott, do you have anything to add?
Come off of mute there. No, you did good. And I like your input. You also did a good job of making up some time as I went too long on my section. It's interesting. The sensitive data cleanup, we're really focused on this one here for all that sensitive data. And there's other side topics like records management and the like, and those are also other needs. But I'm going off track. Jason, you did a good job. Let's go to the next slide. So briefly, before we take a couple of questions, and we see some coming in on the line, so just a reminder, type in your questions or raise your hand. And but briefly about Integro, we are a services and software firm that helps companies with information governance, content security and protection, and content management, bringing these kinds of values. A lot of remediating risk in a lot of the solutions we do, and really in demand. I've never seen, been in business 23 years helping with enterprise content management and workflow, et cetera, in IT, and it's really an amazing time we're in right now and how fast things are rapidly evolving, especially in this area of information governance, driven by regulations and the like. So if you're not learning every day and all the time right now, you need to be. I'll encourage you. It's a good thing you're on the call. Integro has also been recognized by a number of organizations, including Clutch, which is an independent analyst for services firms, and it ranks us at the top of the market leader matrix for enterprise content management providers. And then our last slide, go ahead there, Jason. We got two more. We also have offers. So if you'd like some help, it might be very helpful to talk about your specific needs. And we will invest a couple hours with some of our consulting leadership, IG leadership, to work with your team to understand your requirements and help guide and give advice as to what might be a course of action for you to take. And that's free of charge there. And then additionally, and if interested, you may want to do a content assessment on a sample set of your data, because information is power. So we would come in and index that data and analyze it and report out. So then you really have a better sense of just what you have, like in that report we were showing a little bit ago. And then the last slide here is really opening it up for questions. And we kind of summarized some of the process and some of the things that you're going to want to do as you're going into the effort to clean up your data. So I see we have a number of good questions out there. And Kristen, do you want to answer any of those and ask them?
Yeah, definitely. So just a reminder, everyone, as well, if you'd like to raise your hand and speak directly with Jason and Scott, please feel free to do so. In the meantime, let's start answering all the questions that have come in the written question box. First question for you guys. In your experience, what have you found to be the best tool for remediation and/or data assessment?
Well, I think Jason,
I can take that one.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
So we get this question a lot, and we do have experience with the IBM tool set, which is our primary tool set. But the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of tools out there, and there are a lot of different business use cases that those tools fit. We found that there is no one tool, but to really make a good decision on the set of tools, we need to find out more about what your specific needs are.
So it depends.
Yes, it depends.
Yeah, we do have some tools for the indexing for the first stage of it. We have some good universal tools there, but when it really gets to that remediation, you start to have some different choices there, depending on your needs. Kristen, you got another one?
Yep. Next question. And just for everyone on the line with us, I know we are creeping up to that half-hour mark. So if you have to drop off, that's fine. This recording will be available after the webinar. And just feel free to email me or I'll email you, either way. And there's also a very quick survey for you guys to answer. It's just a one question asking how we did when you close out the webinar. Next question. How can we phase in obfuscation and masking?
So it's a good question. So it'll be addressed really as you're looking at it, because it depends on your data. Is it in structured databases? Is it in unstructured data? How is it being used, and things like that. And we've actually got tools like for the masking, which is pretty interesting. We can mask content, say in your test data sets for application development on your structured data. And then in your unstructured data, we can actually mask unstructured data as well and keep those masks consistent. So if person A, and it was their credit card number, we can mask it and then also mask it in unstructured data as well. So yes, you can phase it in. Depends on your use cases and requirements, and we look at that and I guess what tools you're going to be using as well. I like to think, you start with a hatchet and figure out, well, what content do we just have over-retained and we can just get rid of, and get rid of that first. It's not on legal hold, past retention, not of business value. And then you can focus on that content that is of business value that you must be retaining, and then start to work on how we can redact, mask, obfuscate that content within the documents and within the databases. So hard to answer.
Scott, can I just add something to that?
Yeah, please.
So in terms of phasing in a masking or redaction project, I think it's also important that we identify areas that policy has already been enforced, so that you're not masking content that is being generated. You're not masking content that you're actually that is also being generated within your organization at the same time. So if I could pick a specific area within an organization that had an enforced policy for the type of data that was being masked, that would be a good pilot group.
That's good. And then Kristen, at 1:31, let's go ahead and, or at half hour, let's go ahead and close out, I think. Everybody, we really appreciate your attending. We had a great attendance today, some good questions, and keep the dialogue going. Email, reach out, and we'd love to chat further. Thanks.